I woke up in the middle of the night, unable to move a single muscle in my body. I was paralyzed, trapped in my own body. I tried to scream out for help, but no sound would come out of my mouth. Panic started to set in as I realized what was happening to me. I was experiencing sleep paralysis. As I lay there, unable to move or speak, I started to feel a presence in the room with me. It was as if someone, or something, was watching me. I could sense its eyes on me, even though I couldn't see anything in the dark. My heart raced as the presence moved closer and closer to me. I could feel its breath on my face, cold and damp. I wanted to run, to escape, but I was frozen in place. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw my wife sleeping peacefully next to me. She was completely unaware of what was happening to me, and I couldn't even wake her up to help me. Tears streamed down my face as the presence continued to hover over me, its menacing energy filling the room. I was powerless to stop it, unable to move or defend myself. Minutes passed like hours as I lay there, trapped and terrified. And then, finally, the presence faded away, leaving me alone and shaken in the darkness. I lay there for what felt like an eternity, unable to shake the feeling that something was still watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare, one that I couldn't escape from no matter how hard I tried. Sleep paralysis is a terrifying experience, one that leaves you feeling vulnerable and helpless. And when you're trapped in that nightmare with someone you love sleeping right next to you, it only makes it that much more horrifying. The rest of the night passed in a haze of fear and exhaustion. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the presence hovering over me again, waiting to strike. I was too afraid to sleep, too afraid to close my eyes, even though I knew it was the only way to escape the nightmare. As the first rays of morning light started to filter through the window, I finally managed to break free from the paralysis. I sat up in bed, gasping for air, my heart pounding in my chest. My wife stirred beside me, blinking sleepily as she woke up. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. I nodded, unable to find the words to describe the terror I had just experienced. I didn't want to worry her, didn't want to burden her with my fears. But even as I tried to push the memory of the night before away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike again. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of the night I experienced sleep paralysis started to fade. But the fear remained, a constant presence in the back of my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel the presence hovering over me again, waiting for me to let my guard down. And then, one night, I woke up to find my wife gone. I searched the entire house, calling out her name, but she was nowhere to be found. As I sat alone in the darkness, the feeling of dread started to grow stronger. I could feel the presence hovering over me again, closer than ever before. And then I saw her, my wife, standing in the corner of the room. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was the same presence that had haunted me for weeks, its eyes fixed on me with a hunger that made my blood run cold. I wanted to run, to escape, but I was frozen in place once again, unable to move or defend myself. And as the presence closed in on me, I knew that this time, there would be no escape. As the presence drew closer, I could feel its cold breath on my face. Its eyes were fixed on mine, filled with a hunger that made my blood run cold. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but my body was once again paralyzed, trapped in its grasp. My wife stood beside the presence, her eyes blank and lifeless. It was as if she was no longer the woman I knew and loved, but a vessel for the dark energy that surrounded us. I tried to muster up the courage to fight back, to break free from the paralysis and defend myself. But the presence was too strong, its grip on me unbreakable. As it closed in on me, I could feel my mind slipping away, my thoughts becoming jumbled and confused. It was as if the presence was feeding off my fear, using it to fuel its own power. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, a sudden burst of energy surged through my body. I broke free from the paralysis, my limbs thrashing as I fought back against the presence. With a deafening roar, the presence retreated, leaving me alone and gasping for air. My wife lay beside me, her eyes once again filled with life. For a moment, we lay there in silence, both of us too stunned to speak. And then, my wife turned to me, her voice trembling with fear. "Did you see it?" she asked. "The presence that was in the room with us?" I nodded, my heart still racing with fear. "I saw it," I whispered. "And I don't think it's gone for good." As we lay there in the darkness, I knew that the nightmare wasn't over. The presence would return, stronger than ever before. And this time, I wasn't sure if I would be able to fight back. Days turned into weeks, and my wife and I tried our best to go on with our lives, but the memory of that terrifying night never left us. Every time we lay down to sleep, we could feel the presence hovering just beyond our reach, waiting for us to let our guard down. As the days passed, I began to notice that something wasn't quite right with my wife. She grew more distant, more withdrawn, as if she was being consumed by the darkness that had once taken hold of her. And then one night, I woke up to find her gone again. I searched the entire house, but she was nowhere to be found. My heart pounding with fear, I knew that the presence had returned, and this time, it had taken my wife with it. I spent the rest of the night searching the dark corners of our house, hoping against hope that I would find her alive and unharmed. But as the hours passed, my hope began to dwindle, replaced by a sense of growing dread. And then I heard it, a faint whispering voice coming from the darkness. It was my wife's voice, but it was distorted and twisted, as if it was being spoken by something else entirely. My heart racing, I followed the voice deeper into the house, until I found myself standing in front of our bedroom door. The door was slightly ajar, and from inside, I could hear the sound of something moving, something shuffling and breathing heavily. With a deep breath, I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was dark, but I could see my wife lying in bed, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. But it wasn't just my wife in the room. The presence was there too, hovering over her like a dark cloud. Its eyes were fixed on me, and I could feel its hunger growing stronger by the second. And then, my wife's voice whispered again, coming from somewhere deep within the darkness. "Join us," it said. "Become one with us." With a sudden burst of courage, I charged towards the presence, ready to fight back with everything I had. But as I drew closer, the darkness began to swirl and twist, engulfing me in its grip. I tried to fight back, to break free from the paralysis, but it was no use. The presence was too strong, its grip on me unbreakable. And as I lay there, trapped and paralyzed, I knew that this time, there would be no escape. The darkness had finally claimed me, and I was doomed to spend eternity trapped in its grasp. But just when I thought all was lost, a sudden burst of energy surged through my body. I broke free from the paralysis, my limbs thrashing as I fought back against the darkness. With a deafening roar, the presence retreated, leaving me alone and gasping for air. My wife lay beside me, her eyes once again filled with life. For a moment, we lay there in silence, both of us too stunned to speak. And then, my wife turned to me, her voice trembling with fear. "Did you see it?" she asked. "The presence that was in the room with us?" I nodded, my heart still racing with fear. "I saw it," I whispered. "And it's still out there, waiting for us." Days turned into weeks, and my wife and I tried our best to go on with our lives, but the memory of that terrifying night never left us. Every time we lay down to sleep, we could feel the presence hovering just beyond our reach, waiting for us to let our guard down. As time went on, the presence grew stronger, more relentless in its pursuit of us. We tried everything to escape it, moving from place to place, seeking refuge in the furthest corners of the earth. But no matter where we went, it was always there, waiting for us in the darkness. And then, one night, my wife disappeared again. This time, I knew that it had finally caught up with her, that she was lost forever to the darkness that had consumed her. Desperate and alone, I vowed to fight back against the presence with everything I had. Armed with nothing but my own courage and determination, I charged towards it, ready to face my fears head-on. For hours, we battled, the darkness swirling and twisting around us. But in the end, I emerged victorious, the presence vanishing into the ether, never to be seen again. But as I looked around the empty room, I knew that the fight was far from over. The darkness was always there, waiting just beyond the veil, ready to strike again when I least expected it. And so I lived the rest of my life, always on the lookout for the presence, always vigilant against the darkness that threatened to consume me. But in the end, I knew that I had won, that I had triumphed over the darkness that had once threatened to destroy me. And so I lay down to rest, my eyes closing as I drifted off into a peaceful slumber, safe and secure in the knowledge that I had conquered my greatest fear. As I slept, a strange dream overtook me. In the dream, I saw myself walking down a dark hallway, my footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. At the end of the hallway, I saw a door. The door was old and rusted, with peeling paint and a large keyhole in the center. Without thinking, I reached out and turned the key, feeling a strange sense of anticipation building inside me. And then the door swung open, revealing a room filled with darkness. I stepped inside, feeling the cold air rush over me as I walked deeper into the room. And then I saw it, the presence that had haunted me for so long. It was there, looming over me, its eyes fixed on me with a hungry stare. But then, to my shock, the presence began to change. It shifted and twisted, until it took on a shape that was all too familiar. It was my own face that stared back at me, twisted and distorted by the darkness that had consumed me. In that moment, I knew that I had been the presence all along, that I had been the one haunting myself, trapped in a cycle of fear and paranoia that I could never escape. And then, just as the realization hit me, I woke up, gasping for air. But something was wrong. I couldn't move my body, couldn't even blink my eyes. And then I saw her, standing at the foot of the bed. It was my wife, or what was left of her. Her skin was pale and stretched taut over her bones, her eyes sunken and empty. "Did you really think you could defeat me?" she whispered, her voice echoing in my mind. And then, with a sudden burst of energy, she lunged forward, her hands reaching out to grab me. With a scream of terror, I broke free from the paralysis, leaping out of bed and racing towards the door. But as I reached for the doorknob, I realized with horror that it was already locked. Trapped and alone, I could hear my wife's laughter ringing in my ears as the darkness consumed me once and for all. As I stood there, trapped in the darkness, I knew that there was no escape. The presence had consumed me, had taken over my mind and my body, and there was nothing left but the endless void. And then, just when all seemed lost, I felt a sudden burst of energy surge through me. It was as if a flame had been lit inside me, pushing back against the darkness that threatened to consume me. With a fierce determination, I reached out and grasped the doorknob with all my strength, twisting and turning it until it finally gave way with a loud creak. The door swung open, revealing a bright light that shone like a beacon in the darkness. I stepped inside, feeling a wave of relief wash over me as I emerged from the endless void. And then I saw her, my wife, standing before me. She was alive and well, her eyes filled with love and warmth. "I knew you could do it," she said, her voice soft and gentle. "I knew you had the strength to overcome the darkness." With a sense of relief and gratitude, I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close as tears streamed down my face. But even as we embraced, I could feel the darkness still lurking in the shadows, waiting for its next opportunity to strike. And so I vowed to remain vigilant, to never let my guard down, to always be on the lookout for the presence that threatened to consume me. For I knew that the darkness was always there, waiting just beyond the veil, ready to strike when I least expected it. And so I lived out the rest of my days, always on the lookout, always prepared for the next battle. But in the end, I knew that I had triumphed over my greatest fear, that I had conquered the darkness that had once threatened to destroy me. But still, the memory of that terrifying night lingered on, haunting me until the end of my days, a reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the endless depths of the darkness that lurks within us all. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to hit the like button and consider subscribing to our channel for more great content. Your support helps us continue to create and share valuable information with you. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.